Welcome back to the Racing Mind video series, where we journey deeper into the human mind than anyone has ever gone before. In this video series, we untangle the ancient mystery of mental illness and teach you what you need to know before your racing mind gets the best of you. This groundbreaking series provides answers to some of the deepest mysteries of the human mind and reveals, for the first time in history, the precise cause of mental and emotional illness and the psychophysiological basis of a wide range of psychiatric disorders and associated medical conditions. These educational videos, which present concepts that are so new that they are just beginning to make their way through the medical field, are based on thousands of hours of direct patient analysis and clinical observation in conjunction with the latest research on psychiatric disorders from around the world. In this video of the series, we will discuss cigarette smoking and vaping in relation to psychiatric disorders and neuronal hyperexcitability. Of all chemical addictions, nicotine dependence in the form of tobacco cigarettes is by far the most common and the most deadly. Cigarette smoking claims more lives than any other addiction, yet its dangers are the most easily overlooked because cigarettes are legal, easy to get, and the slowest of all addictive substances to produce their most damaging effects. Even more deceptive are e-cigarettes and vaping devices, for although some of these forms of smoking are in themselves safer than traditional smoking, trends in the prevalence of tobacco smoking and electronic smoking suggest that electronic smoking may be a gateway to the eventual initiation of tobacco smoking. Approximately 40 million Americans are addicted to nicotine compared to 18 million to alcohol, 4.2 million to marijuana, 1.8 million to painkillers, 800,000 to cocaine, 426,000 to heroin, 400,000 to tranquilizers, 329,000 to psychostimulants, and 140,000 to inhalants. As discussed in video 7 of this series entitled The Practical Consequences of Neuronal Hyperexcitability, self-destructive addictions, whether they be chemical or behavioral in nature, are external signs of an inherent hyperexcitability of the neurological system. As with behavioral addictions, persons who are addicted to psychoactive substances are searching for something to reduce the emotional tension that is generated by the hyperexcitable brain. Cigarette smoking helps quell emotional tension in several ways. Behaviorally and psychologically, the repeated hand-to-mouth movements that are performed while smoking serve as a distractor in much the same way as behaviors like hair pulling, foot tapping, and nail biting. The psychological component of these distractors quiets the brain by stimulating inhibitory collaterals, which act as circuit breakers in the thalamus. The behavioral component adds to this effect, thus explaining why physical exercise helps reduce mental and emotional tension. At the neurochemical level, nicotine, like other addictive substances such as marijuana, heroin, and cocaine, activates the reward system of the brain. At the same time, nicotine helps regulate neuronal firing via inhibitory interneurons in the hippocampus of the brain. This could help explain why nearly half of all persons with schizophrenia, a disorder that is hypothesized to be rooted in severe neuronal hyperexcitability, are smokers. Of course, all the same benefits that are derived from tobacco smoking can be derived from e-cigarettes that dispense various amounts of nicotine. Although nicotine-free e-cigarettes and vaping dispensers obviously do not provide these chemical effects, they do provide the same hand-to-mouth behavioral effects that tobacco cigarettes do. Hence, the compulsive use of these devices, like the compulsive use of tobacco cigarettes, is a behavioral indicator that there is an abnormal excess of nervous tension in the body, tension that is partially relieved by the physical act of smoking. Statistical evidence for this idea comes from the observation that the overwhelming majority of adults who have never smoked show little interest in e-cigarettes despite their rising popularity as a relatively safe alternative to cigarette smoking. Such persons presumably have no interest in smoking simply because they feel at ease emotionally and, thus, have no reason to smoke. Additional support for the idea that smoking is a nervous habit comes from the long-recognized link between cigarette smoking and mental health problems. According to a study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, approximately 40% of smokers have mental health conditions, and approximately 40% with mental health conditions are smokers. The power of this bidirectional link has caused many researchers to view early tobacco smoking as a marker for psychiatric symptoms such as anxiety and depression. Yet another observation that links smoking to an underlying hyperexcitability of the brain is the shared effect that emotional stress has on both smoking and psychiatric symptoms. The higher the stress level, the more prevalent that both smoking behavior and psychiatric symptoms become. The theoretical reason that smoking and vaping are highest among high school students is that the transition from childhood to adulthood is generally the most stressful time in a person's life. It is also the time that psychiatric symptoms are most likely to begin. After the age of about 21, both smoking and psychiatric symptoms tend to decline slightly, though both tend to be chronic, an observation that is consistent with the finding that the trait of neuronal hyperexcitability stems from a genetic abnormality. Though there are many factors that contribute to the onset of smoking and vaping, such as emotional stress, family and friends who smoke, peer pressure to smoke, the availability of cigarettes and vaping devices, the legality of smoking, and the influence of social and public media, the strong association between smoking and emotional problems suggests that the primary driver of smoking is the hyperexcitable brain. The inherited trait of neuronal hyperexcitability also helps to explain why some persons refuse to smoke even if they were raised in a household where both parents and multiple siblings were smokers. Presumably, such persons would not have inherited the genes for neuronal hyperexcitability and, thus, would have no desire to smoke. The same persons generally have no interest in other drugs of abuse either. That is not to say that all non-smokers have normal active brains. Some persons may refuse to smoke even if they don't feel well much or all of the time. According to the neuronal hyperexcitability hypothesis of psychiatric disorders, the trait of neuronal hyperexcitability is passed from the parents to the children in an autosomal dominant distribution. That means that if both parents carry only one gene for the trait, 1 in 4 children will, on average, be completely unaffected. Children in such families have traditionally been referred to as quote-unquote survivors because they have been observed to be relatively unaffected by the dysfunctional problems that plague their family members, such as anxiety, depression, insomnia, moodiness, irritability, impatience, excessive worry, and substance abuse. The reason that cigarette smoking, like other addictive behaviors, is so hard to give up is that the underlying driver of the problem is rarely recognized and even more rarely treated. Hence, any attempt to quit smoking should begin with an attempt to identify and treat any underlying hyperexcitability of the neurological system. As discussed in previous videos, the most effective natural ways to compensate for the gene abnormality that underlies neuronal hyperexcitability include stress reduction, establishment of an early sleep schedule, regular exercise, enjoying a relaxing hobby, avoiding caffeine and other psychostimulants, and minimizing refined sugar. If these interventions are either too difficult to implement or fail to yield satisfactory improvement, then treatment with neuroregulators and other brain calming medications may be necessary, particularly during high-stress periods in the person's life. In addition, cognitive behavioral and other forms of psychotherapy may be needed to reduce the mental tension that adds fuel to the smoldering embers in the hyperexcitable brain. Control your brain, control your life. We hope that you are benefiting from this video series. Portions of this video and others in the series were taken from the books The Racing Mind and Am I Depressed or Am I Bipolar? Those interested in developing a deeper understanding of this topic can also refer to the scientific publication The Multi-Circuit Neuronal Hyperexcitability Hypothesis of Psychiatric Disorders. Please note that these materials in this video series are for educational purposes only and are not intended to guide treatment without formal evaluation. This video series is sponsored by the Binder Foundation, a charitable organization that is dedicated to the enhancement of human life through research and education on disorders of the mind, body, and spirit. If you have found this video to be of benefit to you, please share it with your family and friends. And please don't forget, your feedback is important to us.